Hello. I've got a new journal that I've made for myself. Well, it's not actually a journal yet. It's just a series of pages. My plan is to use it to explore some of my personal symbols and marks that I make. I'm going to start with the daisy. There are fields full of them right now on my regular walking route. Took myself out to the field and I sat among the daisies and I asked them what messages they might have for me. Did some free writing and here's what they told me. Hello, Dawn. We are here to remind you of the little girl who ventured out into the world for the first time to find her place in the new and unfamiliar environment away from everything she knew. Change is an inevitable part of life. You have learned to adapt to many new places. You might miss what you left behind, but in time those strong feelings recede and you learn to appreciate the beauty of the new place. The memories are still there, sweetly waiting to return. One of my first memories off daisies comes from my early childhood. When we lived in England, was my preschool teacher showed us how to make daisy chains. And I looked forward to doing that every spring when the daisies started to flower again. And then when we moved to Canada when I was 10, we moved to a town in the BC interior that had a very different climate. And daisies were not prolific there at all, and I really missed them. And then as an adult, I moved to Vancouver, and for many years, I had forgotten how much they delighted me as a child. And it wasn't until I had my own children and showed them how to make daisy chains that those thoughts all came back to me. Daisies definitely turn up in my artwork from time to time. Last summer, I painted this happy little pot of daisies on the wall in my bedroom, and the 4 daisies represent the 4 members of my family, and they know which one is which. I also really enjoyed this sample that I made for a watercolor painting class, and I used it to demonstrate how you can mount watercolor paintings on a cradle board. But I think that today I'm going to use this piece from one of my art journals to inspire my artwork today. And I paired all the drawings that I did in this book with things that I overheard people saying at the art retreat. And this one, I'm not quite sure why I couldn't keep my eyes open. I'm going to start out with my page turned upside down. I just feel like that's the way I want to do this. And the first thing that I'm going to do is make some spots for the centers of my flowers with a yellow acrylic paint pen, and after that I'm going to switch to a white acrylic paint pen to make the petals of the flowers. And I'm not really planning these. The flowers are going to fall wherever they end up, and I'm not going to worry about it too much. And after I've got all my flowers placed, I'm going to switch to a Crayola twistable crayon. I'm going to start doing some scribbling with some Crayola twistable crayons. And yes, these are kids' art supplies, and I suppose by scribbling with these markers, I'm really channeling my inner child here. I'm using a few different colors. I'm layering them in a few different shades of green and blue to get a more interesting effect than I would get if I used just one color. They blend really nicely together. I felt like the centers of the flowers were not drying fast enough and they were too perfectly round, so I'm just picking up a scrap piece of paper and blotting them a little bit to make them a little bit less perfect. And I just realized that it would be a lot easier if I wasn't working on top of a stack of other papers, and that's one of the reasons that I haven't yet bound the book, so it didn't make sense for me to work on top of all of those papers. The next thing I'm going to use is some scented ink that I bought in Versailles. Because if you go to Versailles, you have to buy something completely ridiculous like scented ink. And I picked the orange scented and colored ink, and I'm painting it on straight out of the bottle in between the flowers. And because the twistable crayons are waxy, they act as a resist, and the ink goes into the space in between the crayon marks. And because orange is a complementary color to the blues and greens, it'll create an interesting effect. Of course, it'll make everything else a little bit less intense and bright, but I think it also nicely mimics the way that the ground appears through the leaves. Next, I switched to an orange pigment pen to add a little bit more definition to the flower centers. And when I was digging around in my bag of paper scraps, I found this gold foil sticker paper. It's actually the leftover bits from some circular stickers, because, you know, all artwork looks a little better with some shiny stuff on it. And I'm just randomly sticking torn bits of this gold sticker paper around the edges. Now I've pulled out the thing that I was actually digging around for in my scrap paper, something to write some words on. And I'm going to write down some words that are inspired by the free writing I did before I started doing the art. And because I'm left-handed, you can't see what I'm writing until I lift up my hand. And after I've written down some words, I decided to use my newfound faux calligraphy skills and make these words look a little bit extra fancy. Because I'm left-handed, one of the things that I really struggle with that's really difficult for me is calligraphy writing. The pens just don't work. And I know that there are left-handed pens that you can get, but they don't seem to work for me either. Maybe I just need to practice more. And after I've got my words written down, I'm going to tear out of the paper, keeping in mind that the part of the paper that you're pulling towards you is the part that does not have a white edge on it. In this case, it doesn't really matter because I'm using both sides of the paper. So some of my edges are going to have a white edging and some aren't, and I'm just not going to worry about it. None of this project was really planned in advance, and I'm just letting it come to me as I go along. And I'm placing my words on the page. You'll see that I've glued them down now, and they're in completely new places. I've also decided to add a fourth word, fun, to the mix. I felt like it needed another word, and I'm gluing it down and apparently using a dirty brush. And here it is, the finished piece.